Welcome to an instant reaction from the swamp. I'm here with Zach Abelverdi of Gators Online, and this is not the result that I think everybody. I think Florida winning this game against Tennessee, I don't know that would have surprised that many people, but the way Florida won it, where they jumped all over Tennessee, and then kind of hung on and I mean, really dominated defensively.
Yeah, it was not, I think, the result people expected. If Florida pulled this out, maybe it was going to be a 1-point game or one-score game.
Or Tennessee would have a ton of turnovers or mistakes or something like that.
No, it wasn't. And honestly, man, they got some momentum in the second half. Billy said he kind of played conservatively, but Florida did enough. You know, they dominated the ground game. They dominated time of possession. They got their first turnover of the season. All things that they had to do to win this game, and they did it.
Yeah, because I kept going to the game saying, if Joe Milton's spraying it all over the place and he's not having a good game, and he had one of those, oh God, what are you doing throws. They throws up this, but now he had 600 pounds of humans on top of him when he did it. So Florida pretty much created that play, but that wasn't really the story of the first half. They did cash that in, but they also had 3 touchdown drives that they just did themselves.
Yeah, they did. And they also took a punch from Tennessee early in the game. I mean, they went right down the field, and you went,
Oh, Ramel Keaton catches that touchdown pass. He does the go to sleep thing in the stands, and you're like, oh, well, maybe they will. Maybe they will go. They did not. This was as loud as I've heard the swamp in a long time. It was loud for Utah last year, but really you got to go back to kind of some of those other Tennessee games where the Will Greer to Antonio Callaway or the Felipe Franks to Tyree Cleveland, that sort of thing. But this was consistently loud and definitely affected them. Tennessee had to burn 2 timeouts in the first 3 minutes of the second half, and so it was this was as complete a game as I can think of Florida playing under Billy Napier.
And they had to have it. You know, there was no way that they weren't going to win this game if they didn't, and they weren't going to win this game if they didn't run the ball. Trevor Etienne, as Billy said, that guy was on fire tonight. Career high rushing, most rushing attempts he's ever had, most rushing yards he ever had. That 62-yarder set this place on fire, and that it swung the momentum in Florida's favor, and they never lost.
Well, it also allowed them to bleed the clock in the second half. Graham Mertz talked about how much they used the clock rules to their advantage, that they felt like they could be conservative and they could sit on that lead. And, you know, I never felt like the lead was in any danger. Even when Joe Milton hit Brew McCoy on the long touchdown, it didn't feel like Florida had anything to worry about.
Oh, and then the next play, oh my gosh, a guy in there wearing number 1, playing the edge, set the edge, and ran Joe Milton out of bounds right here. And that was one of the plays of the game.
Leo Man-Mielin.
Yeah, man. So. That was a huge play from him. A ton of guys stepped up on defense. Cam Jackson had a great game. Jordan Castell, 10 total tackles. And Austin Armstrong, man, how animated was that guy throughout this game? He was pumped up at the end, and this was kind of his coming out party.
Well, and that was the question, is what was he going to be able to do against this offense? And this is the second lowest point output of the Josh Heupel era at Tennessee. So pretty good job by Austin Armstrong and a very good job by Florida's defenders, who I thought might get worn out by that tempo. And there were some moments where it looked like they might. They did get a little bit lucky when the official kicked the ball and then had to respot it. But what happened, what's interesting about that is, like, you noticed Josh Heupel noticed that they could just run the play. They weren't like Florida decided to sub, but Tennessee could have just run the play, and they would have gotten too many men on the field on Florida had they just done it. So I think that's the interesting. Tennessee had those moments where they weren't clean. Florida was like that when they were Utah. Florida had a ton of those moments against Utah, and it looked like, okay, if you could correct some of this, you might be competitive, but I don't know. But other than some stuff early, Florida did operate pretty cleanly.
Yeah, I was going to say there was some stuff early. This crowd got their own offensive line to fall apart.
The first play.
And then special teams, once again, they show up, but Billy makes a change. He brings out Trey Smack, who has the best name for a kicker.
No, he doesn't.
Trey Smack.
UCF's Colton Boomer.
Oh, that is good. That is good.
Same high school as Florida long snapper Rocco Underwood. So
that is good. And Trey took over, and I think one of the biggest cheers of the night was when he made that PAT.
Yeah, it was a Bronx cheer, but yes, because it was the first field goal attempt, the first PAT attempt. You're thinking, oh God, here it is again. And really, that's in the writer brain, you're like, well, I've already got this thing going. I got the false start in the first play. I got the and let's explain. This town was a nervous place all week,
man,
because the sense was the fans were going to come to the Swamp and they were going to give it their best shot. And if it didn't work, they might not be back this year. They might have said, we'll wait till next year. I think they're all in on this year now.
And I think Billy, throughout the week and even after the game, he alluded to the noise in the system and the pressure. I think he felt personally. I think his staff felt this was a must-win game for them.
I think everybody in the athletic department was feeling that pressure. It was very interesting. It was a weird vibe going around town Friday, weird vibe going around town pregame. And they needed this as a program. They need us. Now, it's interesting. Nick Delatorre, who you work with, has been saying all summer, they'll beat Tennessee and then they'll lose to Kentucky. This is entirely possible.
Yeah, it is. Now they got to build on this because if you go out and lose next week, which would be 3 in a row,
they're not going to lose to Charlotte. I don't think they're going to.
In 2 weeks.
Actually, well, hey, no assumptions in college. We just watched Alabama almost lose to USF, so it's anything can happen.
But can you imagine the crowd next week for Charlotte if they'd have lost this game?
It would have been dead. Yeah, and it's. I think the way they won it too is probably even more helpful.
Yeah,
this was nothing fluky. They did it the way that Billy Napier has been promising his teams will win. It's just you've never seen it like that.
Yeah, and really, I think there was questions about could they do this after as sloppy as they looked in Utah. They're facing another top 10 team. Are they going to show up?
Yeah.
And now, man, this could be a turning point in his tenure.
Well, and it's interesting because part of this is we don't know how good Tennessee is.
Yes.
We don't yet know how good Utah is, though we suspect they're pretty good. It's weird because you look around the SEC now, and lots of non-conference losses, including Florida to Utah, LSU to Florida State, Alabama to Texas, and you wonder, okay, are any of these teams any good?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of beating up on each other, I think, in the SEC. And look, now Florida's got to reel off some wins.
Yeah.
They got to build on this because it's not going to get any easier once they get to the second half of the season.
It doesn't feel impossible, though. And I think if Tennessee had come in and blown their doors off, the future would have felt pretty dark.
Yeah.
And now you look at it, and I believe they got a commitment tonight from another recruit.
Yep.
So that's the part that as long as he could keep that 24 class together, nobody was expecting huge things out of this season.
Sure.
But if they get the players in that they feel like, and I think, you look at what happened tonight, Trevor Etienne, that's one of the guys that Billy Napier got in the boat after he got hired. That's a guy who's not here if the old staff is still here.
And you think Florida fans are finally behind Graham Mertz?
I think they like Graham Mertz a lot. I think
the
pump fake was what sold them. The pump fake when he's way down the field, he's not going to throw the ball. But the defender bought it anyway, and then Mertz points at him to point out, "Hey, you bought that. There was no way I was throwing the ball."
Yeah, he's fired up tonight, man. After that touchdown pass to Montreal Johnson, he got after it, and look, he outperformed Joe Milton, which I didn't think that he didn't have more yards than him.
Well, he did it in the way that he needed to do it.
Yeah,
he was extremely efficient in the first half. Second half, and I saw some Florida fans tweeting at me like, "This play calling is terrible."
Yeah, he only attempted 4 passes.
It was extremely deliberate.
Yes,
and guess what? That is how they will salt away leads or wins if they have leads. That's just how they're going to do it, especially in this era of these clock rules. But yeah, I was very impressed with the way they jumped on Tennessee because I just didn't know they had that in them.
I didn't expect that. I didn't think that was going to happen. We haven't mentioned it yet, Andy, but we alluded to the pressure that was kind of in town. Billy's first win over a rival.
Yes,
that cannot be understated.
Yeah, and that's what Nick and I talked about last week. This felt like the most winnable of the rivalry games. Now, if you saw Florida State play today, maybe again,
even Georgia didn't look great.
Exactly.
In the first half.
All of this other stuff seems more possible now. And it's not just because of what happened on that field out there. It's also because of what happened everywhere else. Yeah. But if what happens on that field is different, if Tennessee comes in here and wins, nobody's talking about it like that. Nobody has that optimism. So that it does feel like everything's out in front of it. And for Tennessee, I don't think this means the season's over for Tennessee.
No.
You saw the bones of what they could be. Their center Cooper Mays was supposed to come back. He didn't. Florida center Kingsley Aguakin. How do you pronounce this?
Aguakin.
Kingsley Aguakin. He came back tonight.
And he was ready too.
Huge difference.
Oh my God.
A huge difference in Florida's offensive line play with the guy who has started 2 seasons worth of games.
Well, nobody would blame that after the Utah game and say that was a factor, but it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't give up 5 sacks and have all the offensive line penalties and the sloppiness if he's in the starting lineup. Now, they probably still don't win, but they don't look as bad as they've looked in the first 2 games. And you saw the difference when you get a veteran in there like that.
Yeah. And Tennessee saw the difference when they don't have that guy. And once they get that guy back, they may look like a completely different offense.
And the swamp, too. I tell you what, we said it before we started. I think Tennessee fans might be hoping that the SEC scheduling format sticks to 8 games and only one permanent rival so that they can stop coming to Gainesville.
It is amazing. It is a curse at this point because it's not even when they're allegedly better, things happen. This time wasn't fluky.
No.
They just got beat. Like this was a very different situation.
Which is weird because on paper I didn't think Florida was better than them.
And we'll have to see as the season goes on. Ultimately, are they better? But when it mattered, when they're playing each other, Florida was a lot better. And I think that can give these guys some confidence going forward. But like we were talking about, they play Kentucky in 2 weeks in Lexington. They're going to be loud.
Yeah,
that place is going to be. It's not. It doesn't get as loud as this place, but when they're happy and excited at Kentucky, it gets loud.
And they're going for 3 in a row against Florida.
I know,
which is unheard of.
Yes, that's crazy.
They're going to be jacked up for that game, and Florida's got to play and have a lot better showing than they did at Utah.
Yeah. Well, we'll be talking about that game and all the other games. So if you like these instant reaction videos and you like what we're doing on Saturday nights, Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on the On3 YouTube channel. Also on demand anytime after that, and also on every podcast platform. So if you don't want to look at me, if you just want to listen, you can do that. But we do it every night, and we have so much to talk about this week. It is incredible. We can talk about Alabama not having a quarterback.
That's right.
Ohio State's going to play Notre Dame next week.
That's going to be a good one.
We don't yet know what's going to happen with Colorado and Colorado State. That game is still being played. You will hear me talking about it in podcast form when we put all these videos together, but it is I'm just told that Colorado State's winning right now.
Oh my gosh.
I am going to go watch the rest of that.
I am as well.
And we are going to talk about all of this all week. Remember I said all week, there are no bad college football weekends. The slate didn't look great, but look at how much we have to talk about.
So good. So good. And then I was trying to watch LSU Mississippi State, was so ready for it, and that game was crap.
A blowout.
And then I end up getting 3 other great games.
But here's the thing about that game, and it's interesting because I was at the Florida State LSU game, and I thought, okay, LSU's not. And this is what you got to remember. We forget this during the long off season. We need to remember this every year. Remind ourselves, what you see week 1 may not be what you see week 3, may not be what you see week 5, may not be what it's 18 to 22-year-olds. They're very unpredictable lot. So they change, they evolve, they grow. And what we saw on the field tonight may not represent what these 2 teams are. But for Florida,
it's encouraging.
They had to have this one, and they got it.
Yeah, they did. And now they're back home at the Swamp. It's crazy, man. They only got 3 more home games after that, after Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, they needed this one. And then, go on the road and see if you can replicate it somewhere else.
And then you got to go to South Carolina. I mean, they got, like I said, they got to stack them because once that second half starts and they got Georgia and LSU and Florida State, those wins are going to be harder to come by. They got to build on this momentum now.
Well, now's their chance. The nerves are over in this town. It's going to party for at least a day or two, and maybe a week or so.
Where would you guys go after big wins, after rivalry wins?
Shoot. Well, the Grog House was always the best place to go. Now the coaching staff, the Steve Spurrier, Nappies.
All right,
cold Coors at Nappies.
All right, guys, we'll see you up there.
Guys, enjoy. I will talk to you again after the Colorado State game ends.